Right, welcome along to the Dog and Parrot. Put your hands together for the legend that is Supermac.
Oh, hello.
And welcome, you had Gibbo here at the last home game, and Gibbo's been on the phone to me and said, he told me to stay away after us missing the Spurs game last week. But what a performance that was last week. Let's just touch on that first. 5 goals in 20 odd minutes, amazing performance.
It certainly was. And do you know what annoyed me most of all? That after the game, all of the newspapers, they were all critical of Spurs. Nobody really said, well, Newcastle were absolutely brilliant. And they were absolutely brilliant. In that first 20 odd minutes, my word, you could imagine that there's not many sides in the whole world who would have competed with Newcastle in those first 20 minutes. Absolutely fantastic to see, and to see Spurs so demoralised, I absolutely loved it.
And of course, Thursday night, Newcastle continued the run. A slightly different type of game. First half, Everton came at us as we would go at teams at home, and Newcastle basically managed to weather the storm. Wilson got that crucial goal to give Newcastle a lead, and then second half it was like the Spurs game all over again. Newcastle looked like they could score with every shot that they took.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Newcastle, they've got to be a little bit careful. They can be a bit sloppy. If you remember, despite the fact that Newcastle beat West Ham down there 5-1, nevertheless, the first couple of minutes, West Ham could have gone 2 ahead. Yeah. They missed two quite simple chances, and then Newcastle, of course, after that took over. But it could have been a quite different story if one of those 2 chances had gone in early on. And the same with the Everton game. It took Newcastle a while to sort of get warmed up. But once they are warmed up, my word. And the beauty, I thought, against Everton, because I personally didn't think that Newcastle played that well. But if you're a side that can score goals when you're not playing well, then by heavens, you are a danger to everybody else in the league. It's a great strength to sort of have in your armoury, to not be doing so well maybe in creating play, but nevertheless, Newcastle, you get forward and they're dangerous once they get into the opposing box. Well, Isak has been highly praised for the goal that he made for Murphy in that game midweek, and thoroughly so. I thought it was absolute footballing magic that he turned on just in those few seconds, and played well throughout. So here we are today, Southampton, bottom of the table, and they must really be looking forward to today.
Sean Longstaff took a knock in the Everton game, and Jordan Cronin from Newcastle World reports this morning that he had a scan on Friday. Now, I don't know whether this is Eddie Howe again, putting something out there and then, he turns up today, but there's talk of a potential broken foot, which means that if he is out, then he's out for the rest of the season. How big a blow would that be to miss Longstaff?
I've got a lot of time for Sean Longstaff and what he accomplishes out in the field. He's not one of the glamour boys of football at all, but what he is a grafter, and a lot of what he does is sort of out of the spotlight. If you look carefully at the stats that the Premier League put up, that the player who does the most running in any 90 minutes of football, and this is every match so far this season, is Sean Longstaff. He does more than any other player in the whole of the Premier League. And what he's doing constantly is just supporting his fellow players. He's always there as an outlet, just to knock in the ball, so that there's always he's creating the fluidity of the side, and I think that he is helping a lot of other players to be better than what they've appeared. I think he is one of the real mainstays of the side, and Willock is a much better player when Sean Longstaff is in the side than when he's not, and so I think that's a sort of accolade to Sean in that respect, that Willock can get on with his creative game, more than have to take on the various responsibilities, getting back and what have you. Sean does all that, so that will be a shame if that is true, that he's going to miss the rest of the season. A great shame, because I think that he's been a real stalwart throughout this season, and it's obvious that Eddie Howe is recognising that and loves him for it.
Isaac and Wilson, he's been dropping them, alternatively. Is that the right thing to do? Would you like to see them play together? And, obviously Callum Wilson seems to have risen to the challenge. He's certainly wants to finish top scorer, doesn't he?
Yes, he certainly does. But of course, in the back of his mind all the while, he's got that fear that his hamstring's not going to last, and so I think Eddie Howe has just been ultra careful with him. He knows the value that this fellow brings with his goal scoring and the threat in the box, and that first goal at Everton, I thought was a prime example that he just made it look so simple, but it wasn't. It was far from that, and he got Newcastle into the lead, and from there we didn't look back. He's absolutely invaluable for being able to do that. But I think that Eddie Howe, he's just been a little bit shrewd. So he says, okay, well, if he can do an hour, that's great, but I'm not going to ask him to do anything more than that. And so he's going to mix the side about a little bit, just to accommodate a brilliant goal scorer who has got a bit of a physical problem that he's got to, I think, just live with for the remainder of his career. But he's still got plenty to offer, and as we saw on against Everton.
Another man of the match award for Joelinton on Thursday as well. I mean, how important has he been? It's a big turnaround, as we know from last season. But another goal, another assist as well. He's probably up there with my player of the season, to be fair.
And I was calling him a donkey.
Yeah, yeah, well, you all were.
18 months ago, I was calling him a donkey, I have to say. And whoever it was in the club that was responsible for bringing him in,
Steve Nixon,
yeah, should be shot. But Joelinton brilliantly has turned the whole scenario around for himself, and he's now looking a really powerful player, and not only that. I go back to these Premier League stats again. There was a really interesting one that Joelinton was the major ball winner in midfield of anybody in the Premiership. That he won possession a huge number of times, more than anybody else, and I think that can almost go unnoticed with everything else that he's doing out on the pitch, and he's an absolute colossus out there. So I can see him finishing man of the season, in fact, and I think he would deserve it. I prefer to see him in the middle, I have to say, rather than on the left-hand side. But nevertheless, he still does a very, very good job when put out on the left.
before we look ahead to Southampton, let's just have a quick chat about Aston Villa's CEO, Christian Purslow, formerly of Liverpool, formerly of Chelsea. She's got a few ties with the big six. You can see where I'm going here, can't you? Basically says Newcastle United's takeover should be investigated in an interview with Beth Rigby this week. I've come up with a suggestion, Malcolm. Why don't all 20 Premier League clubs get investigated at the end of the season when we know who's going to be in there, and let's see who else has got skeletons in the cupboard? Would you agree?
I can see where you're going on that. And what are they going to do with the investigation? Are they going to tell the Arabs that they're going to get kicked out of football or what? Oh, come on, please. It's nonsense, all of this. And Newcastle United, they have leapt into the top four, into the Champions League, and it's Newcastle's to lose, for heaven's sake. And I don't think they will. And the takeover having taken place, it was put around football that Newcastle are going to buy their way to success. Far from it. They've spent no more than Tottenham Hotspur, and look how shit Tottenham are.
Spoken like a true Arsenal man.
So Newcastle, they got into this position without overspending in any way. So they really cannot be accused that it's Arab money that's buying success. That's just not true. And I really do think that people, instead of coming up with these illogical ideas, that they should maybe meet all of the people involved.
Yeah.
And I've met them a few times, and they are the most charming of people who just want the very, very best for Newcastle United as a football club. And yet football welcomed Mike Ashley in. What a prat football is to do that.
Okay, Newcastle take on Southampton. It's third faces bottom. Means nothing, as we've seen in the last couple of weeks with the way some of the results have gone in recent games. But Newcastle, stay focused. Must be another win this, Malcolm, surely.
How do you think Spurs are feeling? Southampton, how do you think they're feeling? Travelling up here against Newcastle, who have just scored 10 goals, 10 Premier League goals in the matter of 4 days.
Yep.
That's a frightening prospect. And it's not only the fact that Newcastle are scoring goals, but it's the way that they go about their game. That it is quite frightening for opposing sides. And they will have been doing absolute overtime in trying to figure out in training just how they can stop this Newcastle goal-scoring machine, and good luck to them, because I don't think that they will succeed in any way. And I can see quite a goal fest happening this afternoon. I really can. Prediction. I'm going to take Newcastle. I've never gone outrageously like this, but I'm going to take Newcastle to score 4, and I think they might score more. If they go about the game with the attitude that they've shown in the last 2 games and in many other games, then I think they will absolutely rip Southampton apart. Southampton, they can be a very good footballing side, but they've got no real punch whatsoever. Newcastle are all punch, whether they're playing well or badly, and that makes them very, very difficult to play against.
Okay, great stuff. Malcolm will be back after the game to give his post-match analysis, but for now, put your hands together for Supermac, Malcolm MacDonald.
See you after the game. Enjoy the game. All right, lovely.
Good to see you. See you after the game. I'm staying here.
You're staying.
Yeah. Okay, folks, we have got the raffle back. I'm back, so the raffle's back. Newcastle United versus Arsenal. Supermac selling programme. It's £1 a ticket. I'm going to come round and sell the raffle tickets now.